Having trouble writing characters? Same, honestly. Characters are difficult to process with depth and, how other characters might perceive them and plot structure and all of that weird stuff, I know. But today, we're going to be going over 10 questions you should ask yourself whenever you're writing characters, just in general, because I don't think we realize how much characters really improve our perception of a book. Characters can make or break it. If you have good plot, terrific plot, but terrible characters, you will fail. Okay, you'll just fail. Okay, yeah, let's get into it. First question is, what are their strengths and what are their weaknesses, and how do their strengths get outweighed by their weaknesses? In a sense, if they're not really, let's say, outweighed by them, then let's just say they're on par, that their weaknesses can also somewhat contradict what their strengths are, in a sense, to make a generally more compelling character. And yeah, the second question is, the plot changes them, right? Does the plot change them? A good plot can make a good character, but a good character can't make a good plot. You get what I mean? You can write phenomenal characters. It's just, let's just make sure your plot's good first off. But if you have a good plot, then you're going to have good characters, but let's make the characters phenomenal. So does the plot change them in a good way of not making it a flat arc? Flat arc is they stay basically the same, or I guess end the same at the designated point of which is the end of the story or the end of their story, right? And third question, what is one thing that scares them, or basically their insecurities in general? Scary things for them, those make your character alive and off the page, because also you would have to have good prose apparently also to do that. So make sure, I believe in you, okay? But just make sure that they have stuff that is in a way unique to them, but also strangely relatable. Brand new, but still nostalgic, if you get what I mean. Make them multi-face, basically. I mean, each character, even in real life, let's just say we're characters, with certain people, we approach scenes or environments differently. Okay, let's say that we approach them differently. For example, they talk to people differently. So how do they make sure that if they're more comfortable with someone, are they going to talk more, or are they still going to be introverted if they're an introverted character? If they're extroverted, will they actually listen more and not talk as much with someone they care about? You see what I'm getting at? And yeah, that's basically it for the fourth question. And now we're on to question 5. What cliche will you use? And none, I hope, but obviously there is no such thing as original thought, but original characters, on the other hand, that's different. I think if you can do, of course, cliches that might be different. You are fine to use cliches, but just be aware of which ones you are, so you don't go into a stereotypical story. And we don't want stereotypical. We want to make our own imprint on the world, right, with our story. So yeah, 6 is round, not flat characters. So I went over this with flat arcs, but basically a round character is that's going to develop, and at the end point is going to be at a lower, higher, basically, standpoint at the end of their story. So does your character do that, or are you making a character that does that? Are they able to round to a point of being broken, or do they round off to a point of being on this Mount Everest high? Because I know that's a callback to another question, but still we go on. And we're going to go to number 7. When they fall, how does your character rise? How do they take a breaking point and turn it to good, if they even do that? And this is for all characters in general. So antagonists, protagonists, side characters, the crowd, etc. Basically, what are they going to be doing, in a sense? Whenever they fall and they don't have anything left, what's going to happen? It's really something to think about, I believe. And yeah. And 8, does your character have depth that's not entirely traumatized? because there is more to depth than traumatization. Basically, depth in a sense is relatability. Being able to bring those characters to like down this rabbit hole of I get that, but it's also new, which I touched on earlier. You should be asking yourself, what is relatability for my character or for what I want to do with my story? And basically, is it the ability to rise? I wouldn't say the ability to rise, no. It's the ability to give a reader connection. Trauma can work, yes. Everyone has trauma of some sort, but too much gives the readers basically to raise an eyebrow at you. Too little, yeah, okay, right? You just want to get the happy medium. So what trait seems relatable out of these two examples, so we can get to relatability? What trait of this character? Someone stumbling in a pothole and muttering how construction people somehow missed that or haven't patched it up yet, or they missed the pothole because they're rather too smart and perfect to even step in a pothole. They're too perfect for that. Tell me which one's more relatable. Have you ever stepped in a hole and almost tripped and stumbled, and you're just muttering like, why did no one fix that hole, man? I mean, it's relatability out of everyday thing. So that's what I mean. And whenever we get to this last question, it does call back to question 1, whenever I went deeper into question 1, but in an even deeper sense. Question 10, right? We're going to be doing question 10. And question 10 is, are your characters ironic in a sense? So let's say someone is prideful about being humble. You get what I mean? This could add a sense of depth because we can be prideful. Some people are prideful about being humble, and it's like, yeah, you know what? I'm actually humble with all this, and then they just brag about it, about how humble they are. That isn't really being humble. It's ironic in a sense, and not really being humble. So you get what I mean? Are your characters ironic in a sense? And sometimes irony, if you want to even have just a smidge of comedy to make, for example, in my grimdark book novel that I'm writing, I have to add comedy because it is so dark sometimes. But you just have to find these moments where you can just implement these comedy, and having characters with irony, you basically just placing it there, right? So that's about it. That's 10 questions you should ask yourself when you're writing a character. There's many more guys out there. I'm not perfect. I'm a teenager. Let's just stop it there. Y'all take care. Keep writing characters.